The aliens didn't know who would come. Then humanity's deadliest death toll world appeared. Asterisk, the emergency alarm echoed through the crystal halls of the Zephyrian Command Center. Admiral Cathara's blue-scaled hands trembled as she watched the holographic display showing the destruction. Another star system had vanished. The third one this week. How many ships did we lose this time? She asked her tactical officer. 67 vessels, Admiral. All destroyed in less than 4 minutes. Cathara closed her 4 eyes and tried to stay calm. The Void Harvester was not just a weapon. It was a nightmare made real. For 3 months, this ancient terror had been moving through their galaxy, eating entire worlds and growing stronger with each meal. The Zephyrian Council had tried everything. They sent their best warships. They used their most powerful weapons. They even tried to negotiate with the creature. Nothing worked. The Void Harvester just kept eating and growing bigger. Admiral. Call Communications Officer Velter from across the room. The Council is ready for the emergency meeting. Cathara walked to the main conference chamber where holographic images of 11 other alien leaders waited. Each face showed the same expression of fear and desperation. These were the rulers of the most advanced civilizations in known space. And they were all terrified. We have no choice left, announced Council Leader Zorath, his tentacles writhing. With stress, we must activate the emergency conscription protocol. The room fell silent. The emergency conscription protocol had never been used before. It was created for situations where the entire galaxy faced destruction. When activated, it would send automatic distress signals to every inhabited world in known space, asking for their best warriors and military experts. Are we really that desperate? Asked Admiral Cathara. Look at the data, replied Zorath. The holographic display showed the path of destruction. 47 star systems had been completely consumed, millions of ships destroyed, billions of lives lost. In 2 weeks, the Harvester will reach the core worlds. We need help from anyone who can provide it. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, thousands of distress beacons launched into space, carrying the same message in every known language. Emergency situation. Galaxy in danger. Send your best warriors and tactical experts immediately. Coordinates attached. The beacons spread across space like seeds in the wind. Most would reach advanced civilizations with powerful militaries. Others would find smaller worlds with brave fighters. But one beacon traveled farther than the rest, following ancient star charts to reach distant corners of the galaxy. 3 days later, responses began arriving. The Andromedans sent their elite battle fleets. The Crystal Collective offered their energy-based weapons. The Hive Mind promised to contribute 10 million warrior drones. Each message brought hope to the desperate council. But then came a response that confused everyone. The beacon had reached a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The world was called Earth, and it was inhabited by creatures called humans. These humans had only recently developed space travel and were considered a minor species. By galactic standards, the human response arrived in simple text format. Receive your distress call. We want to help. We are sending our best people from our most experienced region. They will arrive in 5 days. Admiral Cathara read the message 3 times. Most experienced region. What does that mean? Our databases show Earth has several different land masses, explained Velter. Perhaps they are sending representatives from their capital city or main military base. But then came more confusing information. The humans had sent the coordinates for their chosen fighters. The location was not a military base or a capital city. It was simply labeled as Australia, a large island continent with scattered cities and unusual biological readings. This makes no sense, muttered Tactical Officer Rixan. Our scans show this Australia place has no major military installations, no advanced weapons factories, no elite training academies. It's mostly empty land with strange animals. Maybe their best warriors live in remote areas, suggested Cathara. Some species preferred to train their fighters away from cities. The council decided to accept Earth's offer. They needed every possible ally, even if they didn't understand the humans' choice. On the 5th day, The human transport ships arrived at the Zephyrian staging area. The alien commanders gathered to meet these mysterious warriors from Earth's most experienced region. The ships were simple and functional, nothing like the elegant vessels of other civilizations. When the airlocks opened, the beings who stepped out looked equally ordinary. They were tall bipeds with pale or tan skin, wearing simple clothing in earth tones. No fancy armor, no exotic weapons, no signs of enhancement or cybernetic implants. The leader introduced herself as Commander Sarah Mitchell. She was a tall woman with sun-weathered skin and calm eyes. Her hair was tied back in a simple style, and she moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in her own skin. "G-Day," she said, using what the translators indicated was an informal greeting. "I'm Sarah, but most folks call me Crocodile. This here's my team from down under." Admiral Cathar tried to hide her disappointment. These humans looked like ordinary civilians, not elite warriors. "Commander Mitchell, we appreciate Earth's response to our emergency call. Can you tell us about your military experience, Crocodile?" Mitchell smiled. "Well, we're not exactly military in the traditional sense. We're more like problem solvers. Back home, we deal with situations that most folks would consider impossible." "What kind of situations?" asked Tactical Officer Rick San. "Oh, Mitchell said casually. "Dangerous animals, hostile environments, equipment failures in remote locations. The usual stuff you deal with when you live in Australia." The aliens exchanged confused glances. This sounded like civilian emergency response, not military training. "Commander," said Admiral Cathar carefully, "we are facing an enemy that has destroyed our most advanced fleets. The Void Harvester is unlike anything we have ever encountered. We need experienced combat specialists." Mitchell nodded thoughtfully. "Right, this Harvester thing. We've been reading your reports during the journey. Sounds like a real nasty piece of work. Don't worry, though. We've dealt with plenty of dangerous predators before. The trick is understanding how they think and what they need to survive." "Predators?" Rickson looked confused. "The Void Harvester is not a simple predator. It is a cosmic-level threat with advanced defensive systems and adaptive capabilities." "Yeah, that's what makes it dangerous," agreed Mitchell. "But every predator has patterns. Every living thing has weaknesses. You just need to know how to look for them." As the human team was assigned quarters, the alien commanders met privately to discuss their concerns. "Are we making a mistake?" asked Cathara. "These humans seem friendly enough, but they don't appear to understand the magnitude of our situation." "Perhaps their simplicity is actually wisdom," suggested Zorath. "Sometimes fresh perspectives can reveal solutions that experts miss." Unknown to the aliens, the humans had already begun their own assessment of the situation. As they settled into their temporary quarters, they discussed the enemy they would face. "So what do you think, Sarah?" asked team member Jake Thompson, a lean man with knowing eyes. "This Harvester sounds familiar, doesn't it?" Mitchell nodded. "Reminds me of that time we had to deal with the crocodile problem up north. Big, aggressive, adaptive, and way too clever for its own good. Plus it's territorial," added team member Emma Rodriguez. "It's claiming space and resources. Just like any apex predator would. The aliens seem to think this thing is unstoppable," said Jake. Sarah Mitchell smiled. "That's because they've never lived in Australia. Where we come from, everything's trying to survive by being the most dangerous thing around. You learn to deal with apex predators, or you don't survive long. Enough to complain about it." Outside their quarters, the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. The Void Harvester continued its relentless advance toward the core worlds, unaware that it was about to encounter something it had never faced before: humans who had spent their entire evolution learning to coexist with nature's most successful predators. The real battle was about to begin. The next morning, Admiral Cathar called the first joint planning session. Representatives from all 12 alien civilizations gathered in the main briefing hall. Their advanced holographic displays showing detailed battle plans and weapon specifications. The humans arrived exactly on time, carrying simple notebooks and what appeared to be cups of hot liquid. "Welcome, everyone," began Admiral Cathara. "Today we will share our tactical knowledge and coordinate our response to the Void Harvester. Threat, The Andromedans presented first. Their leader, General Vexstar, displayed impressive three-dimensional battle formations. Our quantum torpedo rays can penetrate most known defenses, he explained. We recommend a coordinated strike using parallel attack vectors. The Crystal Collective followed with their energy-based weapons demonstration. Brilliant beams of pure light danced through the holographic display. Our focused energy cannons can cut through molecular bonds, announced their spokesperson. Nothing can withstand direct exposure. One by one, each species shared their most advanced military technology, plasma shields that could deflect entire asteroid fields, gravity weapons that could crush planets, time dilution fields that could slow enemy movements. The display of firepower was impressive and terrifying. Commander Mitchell watched quietly, occasionally making notes in her simple notebook. When Admiral Cathara finally turned to the humans, the entire room waited expectantly. Commander Mitchell, what does Earth contribute to our combined forces? Sarah stood up casually, her hands in her pockets. Well, we brought Australia, she said simply. The room fell silent. Several alien commanders exchanged confused glances. I'm sorry, said General Vexstar. Could you clarify what that means? We brought our people, Mitchell explained. Our experience, our way of looking at problems. She gestured to her team. Jake here knows more about tracking dangerous animals than anyone I've met. Emma can survive in environments that would challenge most life forms. And Tom has a gift for understanding how predators think and behave. Tactical Officer Rickson leaned forward. But what weapons do you bring? What advanced technology? Mitchell smiled. We've got our standard gear. Nothing fancy. She showed them her equipment. A simple backpack, basic tools, a first aid kit, and what appeared to be a hunting knife. Back home, we've learned that the right knowledge is usually more important than expensive equipment. The aliens looked disappointed. Admiral Cathar tried to remain diplomatic. Commander, we appreciate your willingness to help, but perhaps you don't fully understand the nature of our enemy. The Void Harvester has destroyed fleets equipped with our most advanced weapons. Oh, we read your reports, said Jake Thompson, speaking up for the first time. Sounds like you've been trying to fight it like a machine or a ship, but your own data suggests it's actually a living creature. It's a cosmic entity beyond our understanding, protested General Vexstar. Not some simple animal. Emma Rodriguez, open her notebook and read from her notes. According to your data, it responds to threats by adapting its defenses. It feeds on energy and matter to grow stronger. It shows territorial behavior by claiming and defending space. It even appears to have some kind of reproductive cycle. She looked up. Those are all biological behaviors, not mechanical ones. The alien commanders shifted uncomfortably. They had been so focused on the harvester's destructive power that they hadn't considered its biological nature. Even if that's true, said Admiral Cathara, how does that help us? We still need to stop it before it reaches the core worlds first. We need to understand it better, said Commander Mitchell. You've been treating it like an enemy warship, but if it's really a living creature, then it follows biological rules. Every living thing has needs, weaknesses, and predictable behaviors. Predictable? General Vexstar's voice was skeptical. This thing has destroyed everything we've sent. Against it, Tom Wilson, the quietest member of the human team, finally spoke. That's because you've been approaching it wrong. When you encounter a dangerous predator, the first rule is don't threaten it unless you're prepared to follow through. The second rule is understand what it really wants. What it wants. Admiral Cathara was genuinely confused. It wants to consume everything in its path. Maybe, said Tom. Or maybe it's just trying to survive. Maybe it's lost or hungry or protecting something. We won't know until we study it properly. The aliens found this perspective strange and unsettling. They were used to thinking in terms of military strategy, not animal behavior. Admiral Cathara decided to proceed with the joint training exercises. Perhaps we can learn from each other through practical demonstrations. Each species will show their combat techniques. The training sessions began immediately. The Andromedans demonstrated their precision flying formations. Hundreds of their fighter craft move through space like a single organism, performing complex maneuvers at incredible speeds. The other alien species showed equally impressive displays of coordination and firepower. When it came time for the humans to demonstrate their capabilities, the aliens expected to see some kind of unique fighting technique or secret weapon. Instead, the humans asked for permission to explore the station's biological research labs. "We like to study the data you've collected about the Harvester," explained Commander Mitchell, "especially any information about its physical structure and behavior patterns." "That's not combat training," protested General Vextar. "For us, it is," replied Jake Thompson. "You can't fight something effectively until you understand how it lives." The humans spent the next several hours in the research labs, examining every piece of data about the Void Harvester. They studied its energy consumption patterns, its movement through space, and the residual biological matter left behind after its attacks. While they worked, the aliens observed them with growing confusion. The humans didn't use advanced analytical equipment. Instead, they looked at simple visual displays and made comparisons to creatures from their homeworld. "This feeding pattern reminds me of a box jellyfish," Emma observed, pointing at a data chart. "Yeah, but look at how it moves through space," added Jake. "That's more like a saltwater crocodile. Patient, methodical, incredibly efficient. The way it adapts to threats is classic funnel web spider behavior," noted Tom. "Gets more aggressive when cornered, but also more predictable." Admiral Kethara watched them through the observation window. "What are they talking about? What are these creatures they keep mentioning?" Tactical Officer Rickson had been researching Earth's database. "Admiral, I think you need to see this." He displayed information about Earth's wildlife on the main screen. The images that appeared made several alien commanders step backward in shock. Massive reptiles with crushing jaws, spiders whose venom could kill in minutes, jellyfish that could stop a heart with a single touch, snakes that could swallow prey larger than themselves. "These creatures exist on Earth?" asked General Vextar, his voice barely a whisper. "According to their databases, these are just common animals in Australia," Rickson replied. "There are thousands of species like this. The humans live alongside them every day." Admiral Kethara stared at the data in disbelief. "They consider these things normal?" "Apparently so, and they're comparing the Void Harvester to these creatures because they see similar behavioral patterns." In the research lab, Commander Mitchell was explaining her team's preliminary assessment to the gathered scientists. "Based on what we've seen, this harvester isn't actually trying to destroy your galaxy. It's just doing what comes naturally to a large predator in an environment full of food sources." "Food sources?" asked Dr. Zilrin, the chief xenobiologist. "You mean our planets and ships?" "Exactly, from its perspective. You've created a galaxy full of easy meals, dense populations, rich energy sources, and no significant threats. It's like finding a forest full of fruit trees with no other animals around to compete." "But how does this help us stop it?" demanded General Vextar, who had joined the discussion. "Well," said Sarah Mitchell, "back home, when we have problems with dangerous animals in populated areas, we don't usually solve them by declaring war. We use other methods, such as," Emma Rodriguez smiled, "relocation, deterrence. Sometimes we make the area less attractive to them, and sometimes," she paused, "we remove the threat permanently, but only when absolutely necessary and only if we understand exactly what we're dealing with." "You're suggesting we treat the Void Harvester like a dangerous animal instead of an enemy weapon?" Admiral Kethara was struggling to process this concept. "That's exactly what we're suggesting," confirmed Commander Mitchell, "because that's what it is. And where we come from, dealing with dangerous animals is just part of everyday life." As the day ended, the alien commanders gathered privately to discuss their concerns. "Are we really considering taking advice from these primitives?" asked General Vextar. "Perhaps their primitive approach is exactly what we need," replied Admiral Kethara thoughtfully. "We've tried everything else. Maybe it's time to try something completely different." And known to the aliens, the humans had already begun developing a plan. As they prepared for sleep in their simple quarters, they discussed their growing understanding of the situation. 3 days later, the combined fleet reached the edge of the danger zone. Admiral Cathara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the long-range sensors display information. That made her blood run cold. The Void Harvester was even larger than their estimates suggested. Size confirmation, Admiral, reported Tactical Officer Rick San. The main body is approximately 2,000 kilometers in length. Energy readings are off our measurement scales through the main view screen. They could see it in the distance. The Void Harvester looked like a massive living mountain floating in space. Its surface writhed with constant movement, and long, tentacle-like extensions reached out in all directions. Some of these appendages stretched for thousands of kilometers, slowly waving through the cosmic void like the arms of a giant sea creature. Commander Mitchell stood beside Admiral Cathara, studying the monster through a simple pair of binoculars. "Interesting," she murmured. "Interesting." General Vextar's voice cracked with stress. "That thing is the size of a small moon." "Yeah, but look at how it moves," said Jake Thompson, pointing at the display. "See those tentacles? They're not random. There's a pattern to how they sweep through space. It's feeding," added Emma Rodriguez. "Those appendages are collecting debris, asteroids, anything with useful material or energy." Tom Wilson was taking notes in his simple notebook. Classic filter feeding behavior. "It's like a space whale, but with tentacles instead of baleen plates." The alien commander stared at the humans in disbelief, while everyone else saw a terrifying cosmic destroyer. The Australians were calmly discussing it like marine biologists observing an interesting new species. Admiral interrupted. "Communications Officer Velter, we're receiving reports from the advanced scout ships." The holographic display showed data from the small reconnaissance vessels that had been sent ahead. The information was disturbing. The space around the Void Harvester was filled with smaller organisms, thousands of them, ranging in size from tiny specks to creatures larger than fighter craft. "What are those things?" asked Admiral Cathara. Dr. Zilran, the xenobiologist, analyzed the readings. They appeared to be symbiotic organisms. Some seem to be feeding on the metal hulls of our scout ships. Others are emitting electromagnetic pulses that disrupt our electronics. "It's an ecosystem," said Commander Mitchell with something approaching excitement in her voice. "The big one isn't alone. It's got a whole community of smaller creatures living around it." "A community?" General Vextar looked confused. "Like cleaner fish around a shark," explained Jake. "Or birds around a buffalo. They help each other survive." Emma was studying the sensor data more closely. "Look at this. Some of these smaller creatures are acting as early warning systems. They're detecting our ships and sending signals back to the main body. And some are like white blood cells," added Tom. "They're moving to intercept anything they perceive as a threat." Admiral Cathara felt a chill run down her spine. "You're saying this thing has its own immune system?" "More than that," replied Commander Mitchell. "It's got scouts, defenders, cleaners, and probably specialists we haven't identified yet. This isn't just one big predator. It's an entire living system." The first assault began an hour later. The Andromedan fleet launched their attack, sending wave after wave of ships armed with quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons. From a safe distance, the combined fleet watched the battle unfold. At first, it seemed like the attack might succeed. The quantum torpedoes struck the Harvester's surface, creating massive explosions. But then the creature's response became visible. The smaller organisms swarmed around the attacking ships like angry insects. Some attached themselves to the ship hulls and began dissolving the metal. Others released clouds of electromagnetic interference that blinded sensors and disabled weapons. "The Andromedans are in trouble," observed Tactical Officer Rick San. On the display, they could see Andromedan ships spinning out of control as the symbiotic creatures attacked their engines and navigation systems. The Harvester itself hadn't even moved. Its smaller companions were handling the threat. "It's learning," said Emma, watching the patterns of attack. "Look how the defenders adapt their tactics with each new wave of ships." She was right. The first Andromedan fighters had been overwhelmed by simple swarming tactics. But as more ships arrived, the symbiotic creatures began using more sophisticated strategies. They coordinated their attacks, targeted specific ship systems, and even began using the disabled Andromedan vessels as weapons against their own fleet. Tactical adaptation in real time, murmured Tom. That's highly advanced behavior for any organism. The Andromedan retreat was chaotic and painful to watch. Of the 300 ships that had begun the assault, only 87 made it back to the main fleet. The survivors reported that their most advanced weapons had been almost useless against an enemy. That seemed to learn from every attack. Our plasma cannons were effective at first, reported a shaken Andromedan captain. But after the first few strikes, they seemed to develop some kind of resistance. By the end, our most powerful weapons weren't even scratching them. General Vextar turned to the other alien commanders. We need to try a different approach. Perhaps if we coordinate all our species' weapons simultaneously, that won't work either. Interrupted Jake Thompson. What did you say, General? Vextar's tone was dangerous. I said that won't work, Jake repeated calmly. You're still thinking like this thing is a machine or a building you can knock down. But it's not. It's a living creature with a functioning immune system. Then what do you suggest? Demanded Admiral Cathara. Commander Mitchell exchanged glances with her team. We need to get closer, study its behavior patterns, understand what it really needs and wants. Get closer. Dr. Zoran looked horrified. Didn't you see what just happened to the Andromedans? The Andromedans attacked it, pointed out Emma. We're talking about observation, not assault. That's suicide, protested General Vextar. No, said Sarah Mitchell firmly. That's research. Back home, when we need to understand a dangerous animal, we don't start by shooting at it. We watch it. We learn its habits. We figure out how it thinks. Tom Wilson looked up from his notes. Every predator has patterns, even this one. We just need to identify them. The alien commanders were reluctant, but their conventional tactics had failed completely. After heated discussion, they agreed to let the humans attempt a close reconnaissance mission. We'll take a small ship, explained Commander Mitchell. Something fast and quiet. We'll observe from a safe distance and gather behavioral data. Define safe distance, said Admiral Cathar nervously. Close enough to see what it's really doing, replied Jake with a grin. 6 hours later, the humans departed in a small scout vessel. The alien commanders watched nervously as the tiny ship approached the massive creature that had just destroyed an entire battle fleet. They're either very brave or completely insane, muttered General Vextar. Perhaps both, replied Admiral Cathara. Inside the scout ship, the human team was working with quiet efficiency. Emma piloted the vessel while the others observed and recorded data. They moved slowly and carefully, avoiding the paths of the larger symbiotic creatures. It's beautiful in a way, said Emma as they got their first close look at the harvester. The creature's surface was covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. Look at those feeding appendages, said Jake. They're not just grabbing things randomly. There's intelligence behind the movements. Tom was focused on the smaller creatures. The symbiotic organisms have different specializations. Some are scouts, some are builders, some are cleaners. It's like watching a city that happens to be alive. Commander Mitchell was studying the overall structure. It's not just big, she observed. It's organized, efficient. This thing has been evolving for a very long time. They spent hours in careful observation, taking notes and making recordings. The harvesters seemed unaware of their presence, or perhaps simply uninterested in such a small potential threat. I think I'm beginning to understand, said Tom finally. This creature isn't evil or malicious. It's just doing what evolution designed it to do. Which is, asked Emma, survive and reproduce. The problem is, it evolved in a different kind of environment, somewhere with lots of space and fewer concentrated resources. Now it's in our galaxy where there are dense populations and rich energy sources everywhere. So it's like an invasive species, said Jake. Something that works fine in its native environment but causes problems when it moves somewhere new. Commander Mitchell nodded slowly. The question is, How do we deal with an invasive species that happens to be the size of a moon and capable of destroying entire fleets? As they prepared to return to the main fleet, the humans had gathered enough information to begin forming a plan. But they also understood that they were dealing with something far more complex than anyone had realized. This isn't going to be easy, said Emma as they flew back toward the waiting alien ships. The best solutions never are, replied Sarah Mitchell. But back home, we've learned how to deal with dangerous creatures that are bigger, stronger, and more deadly than we are. The trick is not to fight them on their terms. What do you mean? Asked Tom. The debriefing session took place in the main conference hall, with all alien commanders gathered around holographic displays, showing the humans' reconnaissance data. Admiral Cathar studied the detailed recordings with growing amazement. We're within 50 kilometers of that creature, she said, her voice filled with disbelief. How are you still alive? Commander Mitchell shrugged casually. We were careful, stayed downwind, moved slowly, didn't make any threatening gestures. Basic wildlife observation techniques. Wildlife observation. General Vexar S for eyes. Widen. That thing destroyed our most advanced battle fleet because you attacked it. Explained Jake Thompson patiently. Any animal will defend itself when threatened. The trick is approaching without triggering defensive responses. Emma Rodriguez activated the holographic display, showing their close-up recordings of the harvester. Based on our observations, we can now classify this creature properly. It's definitely a biological organism, not a machine or energy being. The detailed images revealed intricate biological structures. The creature's surface was covered in what appeared to be sensory organs, feeding mechanisms, and specialized tissue that could process different types of matter and energy. Look at these feeding appendages, said Tom Wilson, pointing to specific areas on the display. They're not just grabbing random material. Each one is designed for a specific purpose. Some collect metals, others gather organic compounds, and these larger ones process energy sources. Dr. Zilran leaned forward, fascinated despite his fear. The level of biological organization is incredible. But how does this help us stop it? First, we need to understand where it came from, said Commander Mitchell. This creature didn't evolve in our galaxy. The feeding patterns and defensive systems suggest it developed in a much different environment. Jake activated another section of their data, based on its size and complexity. We estimate this creature is extremely old, possibly millions of years. It's been traveling through space for a very long time. Traveling from where? Asked Admiral Cathara. Probably from a galaxy with much lower resource density, explained Emma. Somewhere with fewer planets, less concentrated energy sources. A place where creatures like this could exist without causing major ecological disruption. The alien commanders slowly began to understand the implications. So it's not intentionally destroying our civilization, said Admiral Cathar slowly. It's just feeding. Exactly, confirmed Tom. From its perspective, our galaxy is like a massive feeding ground, rich, dense clusters of energy and matter everywhere. It's probably never encountered anything like this before. General Vexar was studying the biological data, but surely, a creature this advanced must understand that it's destroying inhabited worlds. Why would it? Asked Jake. Think about it from the creature's point of view. It's been traveling through empty space for possibly millions of years, surviving on scattered asteroids and cosmic dust. Then suddenly it finds a galaxy full of concentrated resources. It probably doesn't even recognize our cities and ships as signs of intelligent life, added Emma. To something that big and old, we might just look like unusual mineral formations or energy crystals. The room fell silent as the alien commanders processed this information. The enemy they had been fighting wasn't evil or malicious. It was simply a creature trying to survive in an environment it didn't understand. This changes everything, murmured Dr. Zilran. If the creature isn't actively hostile, perhaps we can find a way to communicate with it. Communication might be difficult, said Tom. Something that size and age probably thinks on completely different time scales than we do. Our entire civilization might seem like a brief flicker to a creature that's been alive for millions of Yours, Admiral Cathar felt a mix of relief and new worry. So how do we make it understand that our worlds are inhabited? That it's destroying billions of lives. Commander Mitchell exchanged glances with her team. That's where things get complicated. But before we discuss solutions, you need to understand something else. What? Asked Admiral Cathara. You need to understand why Earth chose to send us specifically, said Sarah. Why Australians were the obvious choice for this mission. Jake activated a new holographic display. Showing images from Earth, the alien commanders saw landscapes filled with creatures that made them step backward in shock. These are just some of the animals we live with every day, explained Emma casually. The display showed massive saltwater crocodiles with jaws that could crush small vehicles, venomous snakes longer than most alien fighters, spiders whose bite could paralyze large mammals, jellyfish that could stop a heart with a single touch, sharks that could bite through metal, octopi that could change shape and color to become invisible predators. And these exist on your world, whispered Dr. Zilrin. Oh, these are just the common ones, said Jake with a grin. We've got thousands of species like this. Australia is what you might call a high-challenge environment. Tom continued the presentation. Every creature on our continent has evolved to be either extremely dangerous or extremely good at avoiding danger. We've learned to coexist with apex predators because we had no choice. The alien commanders stared at the images in growing horror and understanding. Your entire planet is like this? Asked General Vexstar. Well, Australia is considered the most challenging part, admitted Commander Mitchell. But yes, Earth is. What galactic databases would probably classify as a death world? A death world. Admiral Cathara's voice was barely a whisper. A planet where the local wildlife is so dangerous that survival requires constant vigilance and specialized knowledge, explained Emma. Most spacefaring species avoid death worlds completely. But you live there, said Dr. Zilrin. You thrive there. We don't just live there, corrected Jake. We've learned to understand and manage the dangerous creatures. When you grow up, around animals that can kill you in dozens of different ways, you develop certain skills. What kind of skills? Asked Admiral Cathara, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. Pattern recognition, said Tom. Every dangerous animal has predictable behaviors. If you learn to read the signs, you can avoid most problems. Risk assessment, added Emma. Knowing when to approach, when to retreat, and when to stand your ground. And practical problem solving, finished Jake. When you can't outrun or outfight something, you have to outsmart it. Commander Mitchell stepped forward. For millions of years, humans have been the prey species on a world full of apex predators. We survived by learning to think like the predators, understand their needs, and find ways to coexist without becoming food. The alien commanders were beginning to understand why Earth had chosen these particular humans. So when you look at the Void Harvester, said Admiral Cathar slowly, you don't see an unstoppable cosmic destroyer. We see a very large, very dangerous animal that's acting according to its nature, confirmed Sarah, and we know how to deal with dangerous animals, even ones the size of moons, asked General Vexstar. Size doesn't change the basic principles, said Tom. A predator is a predator. Whether it's a spider in your backyard or a space creature eating planets, they all follow biological rules. Jake pulled out his simple notebook and showed them pages of observations. We've already identified several behavioral patterns. The creature has feeding cycles, territorial markers, and defensive responses that are similar to animals we know. It's like a cosmic version of a saltwater crocodile, explained Emma. Patient, efficient, incredibly dangerous, but also predictable if you understand its behavior. The differences, added Commander Mitchell. We've been dealing with saltwater crocodiles our entire lives. We know how to live around them without getting eaten. The room was quiet as the alien commanders absorbed this information. Finally, Admiral Cathar spoke. So you believe this creature can be managed like the dangerous animals on your world? We believe it can be handled, confirmed Sarah, but not with military force. The creature is too big and too well adapted for direct confrontation. We need to use different methods. What kind of methods? Asked Dr. Zilrin. Commander Mitchell smiled. The same methods we use back home when we need to relocate a 16-foot crocodile that's moved into a populated area, which are, prompted Admiral Cathara. Patience, understanding, and the right kind of bait, said Jake. The alien commanders looked at each other with a mixture of hope and terror. These humans from Earth's deadliest continent. We're proposing to treat the galaxy's greatest threat like a wildlife management problem. You really think you can do this? Asked General Vexstar. We've been doing it our whole lives, replied Commander Mitchell. The only difference is the scale. As the meeting ended, the alien commanders felt something they hadn't experienced in months, genuine hope. Perhaps these strange humans from the Death World really did know something the rest of the galaxy had missed. Outside the conference room, the human team gathered to discuss their next steps. Think they're starting to understand? Asked Emma. They're getting there, replied Sarah. Tomorrow we'll show them how to turn a cosmic predator into a manageable wildlife situation. And if our plan doesn't work? Asked Tom. The final planning session began at dawn. Commander Mitchell stood before the assembled alien commanders, her simple notebook in hand and a calm confidence that seemed to radiate through the room. Right then, she said, addressing the gathering of the galaxy's most advanced military minds, let's talk about how we're going to relocate our oversized visitor. Admiral Cathara leaned forward. Relocate? You mean move the Void Harvester somewhere else? That's exactly what we mean. Confirmed. Jake Thompson. Back home, when a big crocodile moves into a swimming area or a park, we don't declare war on it. We relocate it to somewhere more appropriate. General Vexstar's eyes blinked in confusion. But how do you relocate something the size of a moon? Same way you relocate anything else, explained Emma Rodriguez. You make where it is less attractive, and you make somewhere else more attractive. Tom Wilson opened his notebook and showed them diagrams he had drawn during the night. Every animal responds to basic incentives: food, safety, territory, reproduction. The harvester is currently here because our galaxy looks like the best feeding ground it's ever found, so we make it look less appealing, added Commander Mitchell. And we guide it towards somewhere that looks even better. Dr. Zilran studied the simple hand-drawn plans. You're proposing to manipulate the behavior of a cosmic-level entity using basic animal psychology? Why not? Asked Jake with a grin. A predator is a predator. The size doesn't change the fundamental behaviors. Admiral Cathara felt a mix of hope and terror. What exactly are you proposing? Commander Mitchell activated a holographic display, showing the surrounding star systems. First, we need to understand the creature's current feeding pattern. It's moving from system to system, consuming resources in a fairly predictable path. The pattern suggests it's following energy gradients, explained Emma, moving toward areas with higher concentrations of useful materials. Tom pointed to specific locations on the star map. We've identified 3 key systems in its path. If we can modify the energy signatures of these systems, we can influence its direction. Modify how? Asked Tactical Officer Rick San. By making them less attractive as feeding sources, said Jake. We disperse the concentrated energy sources. Spread out the materials it wants to consume, like removing the bait from fishing spots, added Emma. But that's only half the solution, continued Commander Mitchell. We also need to provide an alternative destination, somewhere the creature will find even more attractive than our galaxy. She highlighted a region of space beyond the galactic edge. Long-range sensors have detected several systems with unusual energy patterns. Dense asteroid fields, abandoned stellar formations, concentrated cosmic dust clouds, essentially feeding ground more suited to the creature's original environment, explained Tom. Less dense populations, but rich in the raw materials it needs for survival. Admiral Cathara studied the plan carefully. This sounds incredibly dangerous. How do we guarantee the creature will follow our guidance? We use ourselves as guides, said Commander Mitchell. Simply. The room fell silent. Absolutely not, protested General Vexstar. That's suicide. No, it's wildlife management, corrected Jake. Back home, when we need to relocate a dangerous animal, someone has to get close enough to guide it properly. You're talking about a creature that destroyed our most advanced fleets. Admiral Kethara pointed out. Because you attacked it, replied Emma. We're not planning to attack. We're planning to lead it away from populated areas, like herding cattle or guiding a lost whale back to deep water. Tom showed them detailed behavioral observations. The creature responds to movement patterns and energy signatures. If we approach correctly, using small ships that don't trigger defensive responses, we can influence its direction. How? Asked Dr. Zilran. By creating a trail of attractive energy sources leading away from inhabited systems, explained Commander Mitchell. We drop energy beacons along a path that leads to the alternative feeding ground, and we do this while staying close enough to monitor the creature's responses and adjust our approach if needed. Added Jake. The alien commanders looked at each other with expressions of amazement and horror. You want to fly alongside that thing and lead it like a pet? General Vextar's voice cracked. More like leading a very large, very dangerous animal away from a populated area, corrected Emma. It's a standard procedure back home, Admiral. Kethara tried to process the plan, even if this works. What's to stop the creature from returning to our galaxy later? Distance and energy efficiency. Explained Tom. If we guide it to a feeding ground that meets its needs better than our galaxy does, it will have no reason to return. Animals generally stay where the living is good. Plus, added Commander Mitchell, we'll set up monitoring stations to track its movements if it ever starts heading back this way. We'll know in advance and can take preventive measures. The debate continued for hours, but eventually, the alien commanders had to admit that conventional military approaches had failed completely. The human plan was risky, but it was the only strategy that offered hope of success without massive casualties. 2 days later, the operation began. The human team departed in a specially modified scout ship, accompanied by a small fleet of volunteer vessels from various alien species. Their mission was to begin the delicate process of guiding a cosmic predator away from civilized space. The first phase involved dropping energy beacons along a carefully planned route. Each beacon contained concentrated energy sources that would attract the harvester's attention. The beacons were spaced to create a trail leading away from populated systems toward the alternative feeding ground. Beacon 12 is active, reported Emma from the pilot's seat, energy signatures registering on our sensors. The harvester is responding, observed Jake, watching the massive creature's movement patterns. It's adjusting course toward the new energy source. Tom was monitoring the creature's biological responses. Stress indicators are low. It doesn't perceive us as a threat. Commander Mitchell maintained constant communication with the alien fleet. All vessels maintain current distance and speed. Don't make any sudden movements or energy spikes. The process was slow and careful. For each kilometer, they guided the creature away from inhabited space. They had to place new beacons and monitor its responses. The massive organism moved through space with surprising grace, its feeding appendages reaching out to collect the energy sources they provided. It's working, breathed Admiral Kethara over the communication channel. The creature is actually following your trail. Of course it is, replied Jake matter-of-factly. We're offering it an easy meal with no complications. Why would it refuse? Days passed as the strange convoy moved through space. The Void Harvester, guided by carefully placed energy sources, slowly changed course away from the galaxy's core worlds. Behind it, the symbiotic organisms followed like a living cloud. Energy signature of the alternative feeding ground is now detectable, reported Emma on the 5th day. The creature should be able to sense it soon. They were right. As the cosmic entity approached the region of space containing the alternative feeding grounds, its behavior changed noticeably. The massive creature seemed to pause, its sensory organs extending to analyze the new environment. Look at those energy readings, said Tom, watching his instruments. It's detecting the asteroid fields and energy clouds. This environment is much more similar to what it's used to. The harvester began moving toward the new feeding ground with obvious interest. The concentrated asteroid fields and cosmic dust clouds offered exactly the type of dispersed, rich feeding environment that suited its evolutionary background. "It's leaving," whispered Admiral Cathara over the communication channel. "The creature is actually leaving our galaxy." As the massive organism settled into its new environment and began feeding, normally, the human team prepared to return to the main fleet. They left behind a network of monitoring stations to track the creature's movements and ensure it remained in its new home. "Mission accomplished," announced Commander Mitchell as they headed back to civilized space. One cosmic predator successfully relocated to appropriate habitat. The celebration at the staging area was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from 12 species gathered to honor the humans who had solved an impossible problem using methods that no one else had considered. "How did you know it would work?" asked Admiral Cathara during the formal ceremony. "We didn't know for certain," admitted Sarah Mitchell, "but we understood the principles. Every living thing responds to the same basic needs and motivations. Size doesn't change that. You saved our entire civilization using wildlife management techniques," said Dr. Zilram with amazement. "How do we ever repay such a debt?" Commander Mitchell smiled and gestured to her team. "Just remember that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. And maybe next time you have a problem with dangerous animals, give us a call." As the human transport ships prepared to return to Earth, Jake Thompson stood at an observation window, watching the stars. "Think we'll be back?" asked Emma, joining him. "Probably," replied Jake with a grin. "Galaxy's a big place, lots of